You really think an old man like that belongs here? The sharp whisper cut through the Saturday morning bustle inside Ridgewood Martial Arts Center, sparking a ripple of uneasy glances across the gym. It wasn't loud, but it was pointed just enough controversy to hook every drifting ear nearby. A few students snickered. Others shifted uncomfortably. And at the far edge of the room, the man at the center of it all lifted his head just slightly, as though the words had brushed gently against the surface of a much deeper silence. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Veteran Valor Stories channel so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. The man they were whispering about was Samuel Rhodes, 63 years old. Dressed in a plain denim jacket worn pale at the seams and work boots that had seen more miles than most people cared to walk. His graying hair was neatly trimmed, his posture straight but unassuming as he stood against the wall near the entrance. To most people passing by, he looked like any other quiet American grandfather waiting to pick up a child from class, except he had come alone. His presence didn't demand attention, but it invited curiosity. Something about the stillness in his eyes, the careful way he placed his hands behind his back, the slight angle of his stance, subtle things easy to miss unless you were really watching, hinted at a man who had spent a lifetime reading rooms before stepping into them. Across the mat, a cluster of young black belts lounged between drills. Their laughter was loud, confidence rolling off them in waves. Among them was Kyle Henderson, 24, crisp uniform, belt tied with the dramatic precision of someone who enjoyed being seen. He noticed Samuel first, elbowed his friend, and smirked. "Hey, sir," Kyle called out, loud enough to draw attention. "You here for the beginners class or just chaperoning invisibly?" A few chuckles scattered through the room. Samuel didn't answer. He offered only a polite nod, eyes steady, the faintest softening of his expression betraying neither irritation nor amusement. "Careful," another student teased. "Maybe he's here to show us how they fought back in the Stone Age." Laughter erupted again, careless, youthful, sharp around the edges. Parents sitting on folding chairs glanced over with tight smiles, unsure whether to intervene. A few turned away entirely, pretending not to hear. Samuel remained still, adjusting his sleeve with slow precision. For a moment, the cuff shifted enough to reveal a pale scar tracing the inside of his forearm. Long, straight, purposeful. When he noticed the exposure, he pulled the sleeve back down with calm finality. Kyle grinned wider. "Tell you what, old-timer, why don't you show us a move? Nothing fancy. We'll take it easy on you." Something in the gym shifted then. Not loudly, not obviously, but a few people stopped talking. The thud of sparring slowed. A mother leaned toward her husband. "They shouldn't do that," she whispered. "Leave the man alone." Samuel exhaled once, slow and steady. "No need," he replied. His voice was quiet, but firm like a door closing softly. That only fueled Kyle's bravado. He stepped closer to the edge of the mat, wiping sweat from his forehead as if preparing for a performance. "Come on, sir. Just for fun. We'll even let you choose the speed." Behind him, a tall teenager named Mason snickered. "Maybe he can't hear you," he said loudly. "Needs a louder frequency. Old folks, you know." More laughter. Yet beneath it, a thin ripple of discomfort took root, a feeling like the room itself sensed something off balance. Samuel's eyes lifted, just long enough to meet Mason's, not sharply, not angrily, just long enough for the boy to swallow and look away. A retired deputy sitting near the benches leaned forward, mumbling to the woman beside him. That stance. He's not standing like someone lost. Men only stand like that when the body remembers something the mind wished it could forget. The woman frowned. Unsure, but she kept watching. Across the room, Master Rivera, the head instructor, adjusted a student's belt. But his gaze flicked toward Samuel briefly. Just once. Just enough to show he noticed. Rivera had taught for nearly 3 decades, and he had seen all kinds walk into his gym: confident teens, nervous newcomers, stubborn parents trying to reconnect with their youth. But the quiet man by the wall didn't match any category he knew. Kyle strutted back to center mat. "See," he announced, raising his voice to the small crowd. "Guy's nervous. I'll show him something worth watching." He launched into a flashy takedown with Mason, forcing extra force into every slam, putting on a show now, not training. When he finished the sequence, he glanced toward Samuel as if expecting admiration. But Samuel remained still, studying not the young men, not the room, but the details between them. The shift of weight before a strike, the imbalance in a stance, the impatient breath before a mistake. His expression didn't change, but his fingers brushed the inside of his jacket pocket, tapping something metallic. A small piece of worn steel, smooth edges, faded engraving. A dog tag, though no one had yet seen enough to be certain. Kyle threw his next partner harder, the smack of the mat echoing through the room. His voice rose again. "See that, Grandpa? That's how you do it." Samuel stepped forward this time. Just one step, quiet but deliberate. Several parents straightened. One child whispered, "Is he going out there?" He stopped just shy of the mat's boundary and spoke in a tone that carried further than its volume. "Your elbow opened," he said simply. "If he knew what he was doing, he'd have reversed you." Kyle blinked. "What?" Before he could continue, Mason, grinning with the reckless thrill of youth, tested the correction. He slipped his arm free, twisted sharply, and in a heartbeat, Kyle was flat on his back. Breath knocked from his chest. The gym burst into laughter, not at Samuel this time, but at Kyle. Kyle's face flushed red. He scrambled up, glare fixed on the old man. But the damage was done. Every student's eyes shifted toward Samuel now. Not mocking, not amused, curious. Master Rivera watched quietly, his expression tight. Samuel stepped back to the wall, but something in the room had changed. The atmosphere had sharpened, leaning toward him, like iron pulled toward a magnet. People didn't yet know who he was, but they knew, instinctively, he was not what he seemed. The gym didn't return to normal after that. Even though Master Rivera clapped his hands and called everyone back to their stations, the rhythm of the room had shifted, subtle, tense, pulled toward the quiet man standing by the wall, as if some invisible gravity had taken hold. Kyle forced out a brittle laugh, slapping Mason on the shoulder with exaggerated playfulness. "Lucky break," he muttered, but the grin never reached his eyes. His pride was cracked now, and the crack ran deeper than he let anyone see. Every few seconds, his gaze darted toward Samuel again, as if trying to judge how much the old man had seen, or how much he understood. Samuel didn't look back. His attention was on the mats again, watching every movement with a stillness so controlled it unsettled anyone who caught it for too long. He stood with the posture of a man who didn't need. Space adjusted around him. A boy around 14 sat on the bench nearest him, arms folded across his chest as he watched the drills. His name was Noah Green, a quiet student who rarely spoke during class. He noticed things more than he commented on them, and right now his eyes kept drifting toward Samuel as though pulled by instinct. "Mom," he whispered, tugging the sleeve of the woman sitting beside him. He saw it before it happened. His mother frowned. "Saw what, sweetheart?" "The move," Noah said. He knew Mason could flip Kyle. He said it. And then it happened exactly like that. His mother didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Samuel longer than she intended. Something about him made her sit a little straighter. Across the room, Kyle tried to shake off the stumble. He launched into drills with another black belt, forcing loud slams into the mat, each one heavier than the last. The noise felt like compensation, too sharp, too hard, as if he were trying to drown out the memory of that one quiet correction. But the harder he pushed, the more obvious it became that his confidence was slipping. His strikes were fast but sloppy. His footing wavered. And each time he lost balance even slightly, every set of eyes flicked not toward him, but toward the man who hadn't moved from the wall. Samuel rested his fingertips lightly on the edge of his jacket. Not gripping, not fidgeting, just touching. Beneath the fabric, the faint outline of the dog tag pressed against his palm, a weight he carried out of habit, not sentiment. Master Rivera moved toward the center of the mat, clapping for attention. "Switch partners," he instructed. "Focus on control, not power. Control builds foundation." Students reshuffled. Movement resumed. But something in the air had thickened. Kyle paired with Mason again, jaw tight. As they grappled, Kyle threw Mason harder than necessary once, twice earning a few nervous glances from nearby parents. The retired deputy in the corner muttered under his breath, "He's rattled. Boys like him don't know how to hide it." Noah leaned forward. "Mom, why does the old man keep watching everyone like that?" His mother hesitated. "Maybe he used to practice," she guessed softly. "Maybe he's remembering." But Noah shook his head. "No, it's different. He's not watching like us. He's analyzing." The words settled heavily in the air. Across the mat, Kyle stumbled again, his footing off by just half an inch, yet enough for Mason to slip free and reverse the hold. Kyle hit the floor with a grunt, and several students snickered in surprise. This time Kyle didn't snap at Mason. He looked toward Samuel, and Samuel finally lifted his eyes. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't even reproach. Just a calm, steady acknowledgement, as if he had already predicted Kyle's failure before Kyle completed the move. The weight of that quiet certainty made Kyle look away immediately. Master Rivera, meanwhile, had stopped mid-step. He watched Samuel with a subtle crease in his brow. Each time Samuel shifted his weight, even slightly, the instructor's attention followed. Rivera didn't say anything, but the flicker of recognition in his eyes said what words couldn't. He'd seen something like that before, years ago. In men who carried discipline stitched into their bones rather than their routines. Drills continued, though more rigidly now. The students' laughter faded, replaced by cautious glances toward the wall. Conversations among the parents lowered. Even the heating vent's low hum seemed louder without the usual chatter to cover it. Kyle moved with growing frustration. He was fast, strong, hungry to reclaim his dominance, but every attempt to show off ended in imbalance. He rushed a grip. He stumbled. He tried a sweeping throw. He overextended. His breath grew harsher, sharper. Samuel watched each mistake with the same even expression. Noah tugged his mother's sleeve again. "He's not even trying to hide it," the boy whispered. "He's tracking everything." Before his mother could respond, Kyle barked out, "You keep staring at us like that, old man. You taking notes or something?" The room stilled. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Drills slowed. Conversations died mid-sentence. Feet shuffled to stillness. The tension felt like the air before a storm, thick, heavy, aware. Samuel didn't respond. He simply adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. For a moment, the scar beneath flashed a pale line drawn across years of skin. Mason noticed. His smirk faltered. Kyle saw it too. His eyes narrowed. "What happened there?" he asked, louder than needed. "Kitchen accident?" A few of his friends snorted, but the laughter sounded sour. Samuel brushed the cuff back into place with unbothered calm. His silence held a weight that words never could. For the first time, Kyle stepped forward with something harsher than bravado, something closer to resentment. "Why are you even here?" he demanded. A murmur rippled through the benches. The parents stiffened. Noah's mother whispered, "That's enough. Though Kyle didn't hear her, Samuel finally lifted his gaze fully to Kyle, and the gym tightened as though every person inside forgot how to breathe. His eyes were pale, steady, not confrontational, not angry, but sharp, deep. Knowing when he spoke, his voice was quiet. Controlled. Don't let frustration blind you. That was all. No insult. No challenge, but the truth in it struck deeper than Kyle expected. He blinked rapidly, as though the simple sentence had cracked something fragile inside him. He tried to retort, but the words tripped in his throat, and something else happened. Something only a few noticed. Master Rivera straightened. Noah froze. The retired deputy exhaled sharply. Because the tone Samuel used wasn't someone giving advice. It was someone giving a warning. A warning shaped by long years of watching men lose fights long before they threw a punch. Kyle stepped back. Fists clenched, cheeks flushed. His chest rose fast with shallow breaths he tried desperately to hide. He opened his mouth again, but this time nothing came out. The gym stayed silent. Waiting. Watching. Until that moment. No one knew who Samuel Rhodes was, but now everyone in the room knew one thing. They were looking at someone who had seen more fights than all of them combined, and not the kind one with trophies. The quiet inside Ridgewood Martial Arts Center thickened until it felt almost physical, like a pressure settling over every shoulder. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum more softly, as if the entire building was waiting for something unspoken to unfold. Kyle shifted uneasily, his bravado cracked, his confidence leaking through every shaky breath he tried and failed to steady. Master Rivera cleared his throat as if to break the tension, but even he hesitated. Something in the air told him that whatever was happening needed to play out. He had seen many confrontations in his time, but none that carried the same strange undercurrent as this one. Not anger, not defiance. Something older, something heavier. Kyle wiped the sweat from his forehead, eyes narrowing at Samuel again. You think you know better than us? He snapped. Just standing there, making comments? If you've got something to prove, Kyle. Rivera warned quietly, but Kyle barreled on, fueled by a mix of embarrassment and confusion. No, Master, he's acting like he's above everyone. If he wants to criticize, let him show something. A few parents exchanged looks, most of them uncomfortable. A couple shook their heads, silently urging anyone to step in. But no one spoke. No one wanted to draw attention toward themselves with the room wound so tight. Samuel finally shifted his weight. The movement was small, quiet, but it pulled every eye toward him like a magnet. He stepped away from the wall, boots tapping lightly against the wooden floor. His posture remained relaxed, no tension in his shoulders, but his presence filled the room all the same. He looked at Kyle with steady calm. You're angry at the wrong thing. Kyle bristled. I'm angry at you. Samuel shook his head slightly. No, you're angry at the mirror. A hush rippled through the parents' benches. Noah leaned forward on the edge of his seat, eyes wide. Mason swallowed hard, the smirk long gone from his face. Kyle's jaw clenched. Fine, if you're so confident, step out here. Gasps echoed through the room before silence reclaimed the space. Kids froze mid-stretch. Parents stopped breathing. Even Rivera's hands tightened involuntarily at his sides. Kyle had thrown the challenge out in full now, and no amount of backtracking could take it back. Samuel looked at the mat, then back at Kyle. There was no anger, no reluctance, just quiet inevitability in his gaze. 1 round, he said softly. The words fell like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples traveled through the entire room. Kyle forced out a shaky laugh. 1 round is all I'll need. No, Samuel replied. 1 round is all you can handle. A flinch passed through the crowd, parents wincing, students whispering under their breaths. Rivera stepped between them. Gentlemen, this is not necessary. But Kyle, desperate to reclaim the authority slipping through his fingers, shook his head. "With respect, Master, he's been calling us out all night." "I corrected mistakes," Samuel murmured. "Yours weren't the first." Kyle ignored him, turning back to Rivera. "You always tell us to back up our words with action. So let him back up his." The room held its breath. Rivera saw what was coming. He also saw that stopping it would only make things worse. Kyle would fume. Samuel remained silent, and the tension would hang unresolved. Quietly, reluctantly, Rivera stepped aside. "Very well," he said. "But this is a demonstration, respectful, controlled." Samuel nodded once, then stepped forward and slipped off his boots at the mat's edge. His socks were plain thin, slightly worn, nothing remarkable except for the way he moved in them. Balanced, grounded, every foot placement, deliberate. Noah whispered to his mother. "He doesn't walk like an old man." "No," she whispered back. "He doesn't." Kyle squared up in an exaggerated martial stance, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. His friends gathered behind him, whispering frantically, "Don't let him psych you out. Just finish this fast. You've got this." But none of them sounded confident. Samuel stood opposite him, arms loose, palms relaxed. Shoulders soft, not submissive, but ready. A stance that didn't belong to any class they taught here. "What stance is that?" Mason muttered to no one in particular. The retired deputy exhaled slowly. "Not when you learn on mats." Rivera lifted his hand. "Begin." Kyle lunged instantly, trying to overwhelm Samuel with speed. The first strike was fast, clean form, sharp footwork, but Samuel slipped away by a hair. He didn't block, didn't shove. He simply wasn't there. Kyle blinked, thrown for an instant, and followed up with another strike. Samuel turned less than an inch, Kyle's fist slicing through empty air again. A murmur swept through the spectators. Still Samuel didn't attack. He merely watched. Kyle's frustration boiled. He swung again, harder this time. A kick, a jab, another punch. Each one cut nothing but silence. Sweat beaded along his forehead as he stumbled forward. Off balance. Samuel shifted only once, half a step. And Kyle tripped over his own momentum, barely catching himself before hitting the floor. Noah whispered. "He's not beating Kyle. Kyle's beating himself." Rivera heard it. His eyes narrowed. Kyle's breath ragged. He straightened. "Stop dodging and fight." Samuel's voice was calm. "I am fighting. Just not the way you expect." Kyle roared out of frustration and charged recklessly, throwing his full weight into a sweeping strike. Samuel turned, guiding the movement with two fingertips on Kyle's wrist, barely a touch. Kyle hit the mat hard. Every jaw in the room dropped. Samuel hadn't struck him, hadn't even pushed him. He had directed the boy's own force. Kyle scrambled up, face flushed with humiliation. Again. He barked. "Enough," Rivera warned sharply. But Samuel nodded once. "If he must." Kyle charged again, more desperate, less controlled. Samuel shifted his stance, gently angled Kyle's arm, and the young man slammed into the mat once more. This time the impact echoed. Kyle gasped. Wind knocked out of him. No one cheered. No one laughed. The room was too stunned for sound. When Kyle rose again, his movements were timid, fear flickering behind his eyes. His pride was broken. His confidence shattered. He swung anyway, a reckless, wild strike born of desperation. Samuel didn't dodge. He stepped into the strike, guiding Kyle's arm downward, placing a single hand against the back of the young man's shoulder. Kyle froze. Completely. As if the weight of that one touch carried something undeniable, an authority earned in places where hesitation killed. Kyle's knees softened. His breath stuttered. His eyes dropped. Samuel released him gently. "Your anger is louder than your technique," he said. "And the gym, every parent, every child, Even Rivera felt the truth in those words settle deep. Kyle stepped back. Defeated, shaking. His head bowed low. Samuel didn't stand like a victor. He simply stood silent, controlled, a man shaped by something far larger than the small stage of a suburban martial arts gym. Kyle's voice was faint. Cracked. Sir, I didn't know. Samuel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood. They had witnessed something far beyond sport. The silence that settled over the gym after Kyle's surrender was unlike anything Ridgewood Martial Arts Center had ever experienced. It wasn't the hush of awe after a spectacular technique, nor the quiet that followed a hard-fought match. This silence was deeper, dense, reverent, as though every person present instinctively sensed they had crossed into a moment they were not fully prepared for. Kyle stepped back, swallowing hard, his breath shaky and uneven. His shoulders trembled not from pain, but from the realization that whatever he had challenged tonight wasn't just a man. It was something forged far beyond mats and trophies. Samuel didn't move from where he stood. He didn't gloat, bow, or even adjust his stance. His expression remained steady, his breathing calm, as though everything that had just happened required no more effort than tying a shoe. His hands relaxed loosely at his sides, and even in stillness, he carried the unmistakable presence of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of remaining unreadable. Parents leaned forward on their benches, unsure whether to clap or simply breathe again. Some exchanged silent looks, not of confusion now, but of dawning respect. Several of the younger students sat frozen, wide-eyed, sitting as rigidly as if they feared any sudden movement might break the spell. The retired deputy, the one who had been watching Samuel closely all night, gripped the handle of his cane a little too tightly. His knuckles whitened. "I've only seen movement like that in the military," he whispered to himself. "And not from just anyone." Noah, still seated on the bench nearest Samuel, looked up at his mother with something close to awe. "He didn't even hurt him," the boy whispered. "He could have, but he didn't." His mother nodded slowly. "He wasn't trying to win, Noah. He was trying to teach." Kyle finally regained enough breath to speak. His voice cracked. "Master, I'm sorry." Rivera lifted a hand gently to stop him. "Not now." The instructor stepped forward, clearing his throat with a dryness that betrayed the tension coiled in his chest. He approached Samuel like one might approach a piece of history, cautiously, respectfully, sensing weight behind the stillness. "Sir," Rivera said carefully, "that was not what we usually see here." His voice faltered. "Your control is exceptional." Samuel met his gaze with quiet composure. "I didn't come to disrupt your class, Master Rivera." "I know," Rivera replied softly. "But this room isn't the same now, and that started when you walked in." A ripple of murmurs spread across the parents' seating. Some nodded. Others kept their eyes fixed on Samuel. Kyle, breathing steadier now, forced himself to step forward, though shame weighed on each movement. "Sir," he said quietly, his voice small in comparison to his earlier bravado, "I spoke out of turn. I disrespected you." His words caught in his throat. "I didn't know who you were." Samuel's expression didn't change, but something in the room shifted, like another invisible thread tugged gently into place. The retired deputy straightened suddenly, a sharp breath escaping him. His eyes widened, recognition dawning. "Oh, Lord," he whispered. "That stance. I've seen it. Years ago. Not many men moved like that. Not many still alive." Heads turned toward him. "Harlan?" A woman on the bench asked. "What is it?" Deputy Harlan didn't answer her. His gaze locked on Samuel with something deeper, an undercurrent of memory tinged with fear, awe, and respect all tangled together. "Sir, forgive me if I'm mistaken," he said, voice trembling slightly. "But were you in the forces?" Samuel's jaw tightened briefly, almost imperceptibly, like a door closing on a memory he preferred to leave untouched. But he didn't deny it. A few students gasped softly. Kyle's expression shifted into something even heavier than shame. It was the realization that he had challenged a man whose past was built on things he himself couldn't imagine. Rivera tried to regain control of the room, but even he couldn't stop the curiosity swelling around them. "If you served," he said carefully, "it explains your discipline. But this level of training, it's beyond basic infantry or even standard tactical units." Samuel's silence told them more than any story could. Noah's mother swallowed hard. "Sir, we don't need details. We just want to understand." At last, Samuel lifted his hand and brushed the inside of his pocket, where metal clinked faintly. The sound was subtle, but unmistakable, the dog tag he had been touching all night. Harlan inhaled sharply. Dog tags. Across the room, a few older men exchanged looks of recognition, former servicemen, who understood the quiet weight those small pieces of metal carried. Rivera took a small step closer. "Sir, if you're comfortable sharing, even just your branch." Samuel didn't flinch. He didn't turn away. But he did draw a slow breath, steadying something himself before speaking. "I served," he said simply. "That's enough." The room absorbed those words like stone absorbs rain, slowly, heavily, with a depth that hinted at stories far too large to fit inside a single sentence. Noah whispered, "He moved like he's done this before." "But for real?" Rivera nodded faintly. "He has." Kyle bowed his head. "Sir, I'm sorry, truly." Samuel finally looked at the young man. His gaze wasn't harsh. It wasn't judgmental. It was understanding. "You're young," Samuel said, voice softer than before. "You made a mistake. Don't let pride turn mistakes into habits." Kyle blinked once, twice, and his shoulders sagged. A lesson had been carved into him tonight, deeper than any throw or strike could teach. Samuel stepped off the mat, retrieving his boots calmly. He slid them on without hurry. His movements were deliberate, contained, like a man accustomed to leaving rooms quietly. But before he reached the door, Rivera called after him. "Sir, wait." Samuel paused. "You don't owe us anything," Rivera said. "But if you ever choose to teach, even a single lesson, this room would listen." Samuel didn't smile, but the faintest warmth touched his eyes. "Maybe," he murmured, "in another life." He turned again, opening the door, but just before stepping out, a small voice called from behind him, "Sir?" Samuel turned. It was Noah, his eyes wide, sincere. "Thank you," the boy said, a tremor of genuine respect in his tone. "For teaching without hurting." Samuel nodded once. "That's the only lesson worth giving." And with that, he stepped outside, leaving the gym wrapped in silence, reverence, and the unmistakable feeling that something extraordinary had just brushed past their ordinary lives. The next morning, Ridgewood Martial Arts Center felt strangely different. The mats were the same. The faint scent of sweat and disinfectant lingered as usual. Kids rushed through the entrance, still buzzing with energy, chattering about weekend plans and new techniques they hoped to learn. Parents sipped coffee while waiting for class to begin. But beneath all that familiar noise, there was something quieter, an invisible shift, subtle but unmistakable. The kind of shift that happens when people realize they witnessed something important, even if they can't fully articulate why. Kyle was the first of the advanced students to arrive. Normally he strolled in with relaxed confidence, joking with his friends as if the gym belonged to him. This morning he came early, sweeping the mat with deliberate strokes, eyes focused downward. He didn't complain, didn't smirk, didn't look for an audience. His movements were slower, as though each pass of the broom was a chance to untangle the knots from last night's humiliation. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the door, not with defiance, but with hope. Maybe waiting for Samuel to return. Maybe hoping for another lesson. Maybe wanting a chance to say sorry again, properly this time. When Mason entered, he froze briefly, staring at Kyle working. "Dude, you're here early?" he asked hesitantly. Kyle didn't look up. "Just helping clean." Mason blinked, confused. "Since when do you?" "Since last night." Kyle cut in softly. The answer felt final. As the rest of the students trickled in, their expressions shifted too. Those who had laughed at Samuel the night before stayed unnervingly quiet. Even the younger kids who normally bounced around before class stood straighter, watched more carefully, seemed more aware of the space they occupied. It was as if the gym had absorbed the memory of Samuel's presence, the way he moved, the way he commanded the room without speaking, the way he defeated without hurting. That memory lived now in the posture of the students, in the quietness between Rivera's instructions, in the measured way they stepped onto the mats. Master Rivera himself felt it more deeply than he admitted. The previous night had echoed through his dreams. Samuel's stance, the ease of his movement, the discipline in every shift of weight. Rivera had spent decades training, studying countless techniques, learning from masters around the world. Yet in one evening, Samuel had displayed something Rivera had never seen before. This morning, he moved through the gym with uncharacteristic calm, watching his students not just train, but think before they moved. That alone told him how profoundly one quiet stranger had changed the room. Then, sometime in the second hour of class, he felt a tug on his sleeve. It was Noah. "Master Rivera," the boy asked softly, "is Mr. Rhodes coming back?" Rivera paused. The weight of the question sat between them. "I don't know," he admitted. "Men like him, they come and go on their own terms." Noah nodded, though his disappointment showed. He taught a lot without even trying. Rivera smiled faintly. "The best teachers often do." 3 weeks passed. Samuel didn't return, but the imprint he left remained. Parents noticed it in their children: more patience, more humility, more focus. Rivera noticed it in his advanced students, especially Kyle, who had transformed in ways no drill or lecture had ever achieved. He listened more, hit the mats with less ego, treated every technique with respect rather than showmanship. And then there was the dog tag. One morning, Rivera found it hanging carefully above the entrance door of the gym. A single silver tag, worn smooth around the edges, initials barely legible. No note, no explanation. Just a quiet token, placed with intention. Kyle was the one who spotted it first. He stared at it for a long time, then pressed one hand gently to his chest, as though humbled by the weight of being trusted with something sacred. "Master," he whispered, "is that his?" Rivera studied it closely. He didn't touch it. "Yes," he said softly. "It must be." No one dared remove it. No one dared disturb it. It stayed exactly where it was above the entrance, watching over the room like a silent reminder. Respect, humility, discipline. Harlan, the retired deputy, began visiting more often too. Not to train, but simply to watch, quietly from the corner chair with his cane resting across his knees. Some days he watched the door, as if hoping Samuel would return. Other days his gaze drifted across the mats, lost in memories only men of his generation carried. He never spoke about what he said that night, the name he recognized, the past he hinted at. But sometimes, when the gym was quiet and only a handful of people remained, he would murmur softly, almost to himself, "Ghosts like him don't just disappear. They move on." And he would tap his cane once against the floor. Solemn, respectful. Occasionally, late in the evening, someone leaving the gym caught a glimpse of a familiar figure across the street, a man in a denim jacket. Hands in his pockets, head slightly bowed as he walked past without looking in. He never stopped, never waved. Just passed by, steady and unhurried, like a shadow that preferred silence over recognition. One night, Noah spotted him and rushed to the window. "Mom, it's him!" But by the time she joined him, Samuel had already turned the corner, disappearing into the quiet streets of Ridgewood. Life went on. Classes continued. Students grew. But the gym, every inch of it, carried Samuel Rhodes in its routine. In the respectful bow before stepping onto the mat. In the steadier breaths students took before attempting a technique. In the silence that followed each sparring match. When everyone reflected rather than celebrated. And above the entrance, the dog tag gleamed faintly under the fluorescent lights, untouched. Unclaimed, sacred, for those who had been there that night. The story stayed with them. A story passed quietly in hushed voices, shared with new students. Remembered by those who would never forget. About a man who moved like time had shaped him. A man who fought without striking. Man who carried wars in the silence of his footsteps. A man who came not to prove anything, but to remind. In the end, Samuel Rhodes didn't need applause, recognition, or titles. He left behind something far greater. Respect born from truth, humility, born from discipline. And a story that lived on in every person who stepped onto those mats, the kind of story only a veteran could leave behind.